What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. In today's episode, we are going to be breaking down day one of the NFL Draft. We're going to give you everything you need to know, including steal of the day, surprise of the day, biggest reach, and much, much more. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick. Well, we are recording pretty late. The first round of the NFL draft went 4.5 hours. But here we are, and we got a lot to talk about. So let's just jump right into it. Starting off with the steal of the day, why don't you get us started with who you think got the best overall pick?
Yeah, this was pretty obvious to me when I saw Chicago Bears trading up to 11 with the New York Giants. I saw it right there. Justin Fields was going to the Chicago Bears. I knew exactly who they wanted. They tried to get Russell Wilson earlier this offseason. They tried to get Deshaun Watson. They could not get either, but they get Justin Fields, the next best thing. They now have him under contract for the next 4 to 5 years, and look, this is a team that can now start to build around this guy. Allen Robinson signed his franchise tag, and I think now that they've got some key pieces there, this team can finally start to take shape. So I really like this. Justin Fields finally fills a huge hole for the team, and to me, him being the fourth quarterback taken is by far and away the biggest steal of this draft.
Yeah, and not only that, but when you take a look at what the Chicago Bears have done, Mitchell Trubisky was the second pick in the draft, and then they passed up on players like Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So getting just Justin Fields is a little bit of retribution for the Chicago Bears fan base. So I'm pretty sure they are very happy with that selection. But my steal of the draft actually came later in the night when Caleb Farley, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech, finally came off the board at pick number 22 to the Tennessee Titans. And when you take a look at what some of these teams were looking at and why this guy kept falling, well, yeah, he had 2 back surgeries and a torn ACL. So that is a lot of wear and tear, and he technically only had 1 full season at the cornerback position at Virginia Tech. So not a lot of film on a guy who did ball out while he was at Virginia Tech, but nonetheless, it scared a lot of teams off and ended up getting him into the 20s of the first round, and he did get selected by the Tennessee Titans. And we're talking about a guy that ran a sub 440, and he was just an absolute monster on the field. And I believe that they got the defensive steal of the draft.
Absolutely. As far as surprises of the day, I think none are bigger than the Jets trading up from 23 to 14 with the Minnesota Vikings to draft an offensive guard. I mean, they drafted Elijah Vera Tucker, who is listed as a guard, but I think he will be playing right tackle for them. What I really like about Elijah Vera Tucker, his versatility. He can play guard, he can play tackle, he can play on both sides. And he is so athletic that he can really help them out in the run game, the pass game, and it'll be perfect for Zach Wilson, who's a very mobile quarterback. This is the guy that will be really good for them in the long run. And now they have their bookends shored up. They can really start to have this offense take shape. But to have them move up to 14 from 23 and get a guy that they could have probably gotten at 23 doesn't make a ton of sense. But they guaranteed they got their guy, and they didn't have to give up too much for it. They gave up a couple of third-round picks, and they also got a fourth-round pick on top of that. So, look, you're not losing too much, and you're securing your guy. So I think that it's a win-win all around, and I think everybody ended up happy in this one, but it was definitely a surprise to see the Jets moving up from that 23 spot.
Yeah, I took a look at this trade, and I talked about it throughout the night, and I just talked about how mind-boggling the whole thing was. I just couldn't imagine, even before the pick was announced, what the Jets were trying to do. I mean, at that point, you're jumping the New England Patriots, who are in the same division as you, and you say, okay, who do you expect the Patriots to take? Is it worth jumping all this way to come get this guy? And then it ended up being offensive guard slash tackle Elijah Vera Tucker, who is a really, really great prospect, and he, he's got a lot of versatility, and he's going to play a really big role for the Jets. But again, I think he could have been there at 23, and they wouldn't have had to give up anything. I know you said they didn't give up a whole hell of a lot, but I mean, I'd rather give up nothing than a little bit, even if I could have had that guy or somebody that's similar to him at 23. But my biggest surprise of the day was the fact that, we had five cornerbacks taken when personally I only had three with a first round grade on them. Greg Newsome the second was the closest thing that I had coming into the first round out that, I really didn't. I thought he was an early day two type of guy. But he snuck his way into the first round, and then on top of that, we had Eric Stokes, the cornerback from Georgia, coming out here, and it's a really big head scratcher here because there's other corners where I would have thought that these teams were looking to go. And one name standing out in particular was Desante Samuel Jr. I thought that he was going to be somebody that teams were really high on just because of the bloodline. His father's name carries a lot of weight, former Super Bowl champion, played for the Patriots and the Eagles. I think that, that would have been a really key piece. But Eric Stokes coming out of Georgia was a really big head scratcher. Not once did I project that five cornerbacks would be taken in the first round.
No, and then we saw Travis Etienne go back to Jacksonville, or for the first time, I should say, but he's back with Trevor Lawrence. These two get to continue their relationship together, and absolute head scratcher when you see that they had the rookie running back of the year in James Robinson, who ran for over 1,700 yards last season, absolutely looked like a monster, looked like the second coming of Leonard Fournette. And now you go get him a perfect offset back, a guy who's great out of the backfield at catching the ball. He's an east to west coast runner, very shifty side to side guy. Perfect offset to James Robinson, who's a very north to south, head down, tough runner. I think this is really going to work out for them. They now have one of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL.
My final surprise of the day actually came from the New York Giants. So not only did they trade back with the Chicago Bears, but they did take wide receiver Kadarius Toney. And when I took a look at the wide receivers that were on the New York Giants prior to this draft happening, I took a look at Kenny Golladay. I took a look at Sterling Shepard. I took a look at John Ross. I mean, they are four or five wide receivers deep, and now they've drafted Kadarius Toney coming out of the University of Florida. And granted, he's a great talent and he's extremely fast and agile, very versatile, can do a lot of things with the football in his hands. But that was definitely not a need for the New York Giants. In fact, I believe that they missed out on a huge opportunity to get somebody on the edge to help them rush the passer. I thought they could have used a middle linebacker that could have helped them in the middle of their defense. So I think that they missed out on a huge opportunity and stacked up at a position where they already had a surplus of talent. And now you're adding Kadarius Toney, and it's just an embarrassment of riches. I'm going to be interested to see what Dave Gettleman has in store for the rest of the draft because I'm not exactly sure what his plan is moving forward.
Now, as far as biggest reaches of day one, I can say there is none bigger than Peyton Turner, defensive end out of the University of Houston, who went to the New Orleans Saints. And to me, this one is a complete stretch. You're getting a guy that you believe has a lot of upside, but to everybody else, he just has a very low floor, a guy that can be a complete bust. And you're really taking a flyer on this one, saying he's our guy. He's going to pan out in our system. And Peyton Turner, I don't know too much about him, but look, he's explosive off the edge. He's got really good size, and he's got good measurables that you can work with. He has the athleticism. He just doesn't have the tape that you want from a round one guy, a day one guy that other guys like Azeez Ojulari, who were passed up on in the first round, have. He has the tape to back up his measurables and athleticism. This one is a real head scratcher, and to me, this is a huge reach. Somebody that they could have easily gotten day two.
I mean, you said Azeez Ojulari, but I'll give you somebody who was drafted 2 picks later, or sorry, 3 picks later, and that would be Jason Owe going to the Baltimore Ravens. I think Jason Owe was a much better talent, much better prospect coming into this NFL draft, and the New Orleans Saints had a very clear shot at him and swung and missed clearly. Even Joe Tryon, who ended up going at pick number 32, was a much better defensive end edge prospect than Peyton Turner. So I believe that the New Orleans Saints definitely missed here. The other one that I'm going to take a look at, though, for biggest reach of the day was Jamin Davis, the middle linebacker coming out of the University of Kentucky. Now, he's very rangy, very lengthy, and kind of reminds me a little bit of Darius Leonard, but I don't think he's as explosive as Darius Leonard is. In fact, I don't think he's as talented as Darius Leonard is. And the Washington football team selected him 19th overall. They added him to their already stacked defense. They got to fix up that second level of the defense, the middle linebacker position. Huge need for them. Jamin Davis is going to help fill that role. But again, there were players like Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, who didn't even get selected in the first round, where I thought they would have been a much better fit for the Washington football team than Jamin Davis. I think Jamin Davis kind of snuck up draft boards toward the latter part of last week and really kind of showed up like he was going to be a first round pick. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah started to fall, and I still don't understand exactly why that is. Either way, I believe that they did not get the best value for their pick, and they did not even get the best player at their position, while that other player is still available.
Absolutely. And biggest miss of the day, there's really only one that we found, but it's the Packers not taking a wide receiver. Everybody saw the reports. Aaron Rodgers does not want to be in Green Bay any longer. They do not want to move on from him, and clearly they do not want to help him either. They do not want to get him a wide receiver. I don't know what this man has to do to say that he doesn't want to be there and you're not going to help the situation at all. You're going to go and get Eric Stokes, a corner who is not going to help you any further your team in the playoff process. It's clear to everybody else that wide receiver is the biggest hole in this team, except for the front office of the Green Bay Packers. They clearly think that who they have on staff at wide receiver is good enough to get the job done, whereas their quarterback is telling them a different story. They just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers came out earlier in the day and said that he didn't want to return to the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers gave him the middle finger by drafting a cornerback that actually shouldn't have even been a first round pick. So we're taking a look at, I mean, a whole spectrum of things going on in Green Bay. And at this point, it's an absolute mess. They're going to need to go on Jerry Springer to figure this thing out because it's really not going to help. And in fact, I expect Aaron Rodgers to retire soon and become the full time host of Jeopardy. But before that happens, I want to just go over the best available players going into day two. I take a look at one of the guys that I've already mentioned tonight, Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, the middle linebacker coming out of the University of Notre Dame. This guy is an absolute thumper. He's rangy. He can run north to south, east to west. He can bang with the biggest of them, and he can run with the fastest of them. This guy can do absolutely everything you ask a middle linebacker to do. And the fact that he's still on the board is a huge head scratcher to me. I had him ranked as my number one middle linebacker, my number one interior linebacker going into this draft. I still have him ranked there. And to see a couple other linebackers go ahead of him just really stands out to me as something that should never happen.
Yeah, another guy is Christian Barmore, defensive tackle, the best defensive tackle in this draft class. He was huge for the Alabama Crimson Tide in their national championship run this past year, and he really helped clog up the hole. They really helped stop Ohio State in that national championship game. And this guy not going on day one is really big. And whoever gets him on day two is getting a huge value in talent. This guy is really good at stopping the run, very athletic tackle that can push through the A gap and really get to the quarterback. I think that he has so much potential and can really fit in multiple packages that I think a lot of teams can really use his assets. So a really strong candidate prospect to look out for on day two. I'm going to group one more and then I'll hand it to Mike over for the last one. Tevin Jenkins, the big right tackle out of Oklahoma State. He's a massive 6'6", 330 pounds, but he's super athletic. He has power for days. And what he did on tape really is going to translate to the NFL. He's able to absolutely maul edge rushers. He's able to quickly get into position and stop them from getting around the edge. He's very athletic and keep up with mobile quarterbacks. And I think that's something that's really coveted in today's NFL. I'm surprised that teams like the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't go after a guy of this talent who need offensive tackle, but whoever is there in the early rounds of day two are going to luck out with a guy like this who's going to offer plenty of talent and protection for many years to come.
You talked about the Ravens and the Steelers. Well, I'll one up you. Alex Leatherwood was taken number 17 overall by the Las Vegas Raiders, and I actually had Tevin Jenkins slated in that selection in my mock draft because I thought that offensive tackle was a huge need for them. Well, they thought the same way, but they went with a completely different guy. In fact, Alex Leatherwood for both of us actually had a day two grade, and Tevin Jenkins was one of the higher rated offensive tackles on both of our draft boards. So taking a look at Tevin Jenkins still being available and seeing some of the other guys that were drafted ahead of him is a really big head scratcher for both of us. I'm excited to see where he can go. I have a few ideas of where he might end up, but I'm more interested to see what team is willing to spend a pick to get their offensive tackle for the future. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with Trayvon Marig, the best safety in this draft. Obviously, there were no safeties taken in the first round because Trayvon Marig is still available. And I don't say this lightly. He is the best safety by far. I mean, just what he showed on film, what he was able to do in college was super impressive. He actually crept up draft boards late in the process, and he was able to showcase his skills on tape and really show that he could be an NFL player. I expect him to go early in day two, and I have a feeling that he may end up being the first pick in the second round.
Yeah, it is quite possible a huge need for the Jacksonville Jaguars is safety. Another big one is defensive tackle, and Christian Barmore still there. Who knows? They might even want to fix up this offensive line a little bit more and get Tevin Jenkins. They have so many possibilities here, and they are endless. They have their pick of the litter, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're now on the clock.
I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are only allowed to draft Clemson players, if I read that correctly.
That sounds about right.
All right, well, that's going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.